We might take it off. We're expecting about 15 people, so some people might jump on board as we do this. So thanks for coming along. So what we're going to do is we're going to share the findings today of the Connect meter from the survey that went out. But just to let you know that how I tend to run this type of coffee catch-up is just really informal. So I somewhat encourage people to leave their microphones on, and we can just basically have a dialogue. So rather than a chalk and talk or a lecture sort of thing, just to really find out what's happening in the real world. And later on, we can send you out the data and stuff like that. So I've got a summary of all the data, but I just prefer to keep it conversational. So interestingly is, and also too, we'll be recording this. So is everybody okay for us to record this so that we can send it out later on? Is that okay? Yeah. So feel free, if you want to use the features of Zoom, the thumbs up or the clap or make comments in the chat area. Lance is going to be co-hosting with me today. So he'll be, because I can only do one thing at a time, he'll just be checking on people's comments and then sort of adding to that as well. So that's great. So with the survey itself, what we did was we went out to our global database, and we had 90 people invited to take part in the connection survey. We had a response of about 55 people that responded. And then from the age demographics, we basically had 16% of people that responded from 13 through to 34. We had 73% that responded from 35 to 62. And then we had 10% from the remaining 62 and above 10%. So it's really quite interesting, that cross-section of age demographics. And then from geographical demographics, we went out to 10 regions, and the 4 main regions that came back was from Australia, Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. And so basically, we only wanted to keep it really simple by way of the slicing and dicing. And then with that, the report came back, if you like, in a traffic light system. So, red being danger, orange being warning, green is good. And what the survey looked at by way of the connection meter was 4 main elements. It looked at aspects of collaboration. It looked at aspects of leadership, the practicality of working from home, and also too, it looked at stress. And so there's some really interesting findings that came out of that. And so by way of connection, what was found across the entire age demographics and across the entire regions was that 58% of people feel connected, which I thought was interesting, with the fact that it means that 42% of people aren't feeling connected. And I'm just wondering what people's experiences are in regards to that. So would anybody like here online feel that they're highly connected? Would anybody give themselves like a 100%? No. And if so, what does that look like? So it'll be interesting to find out what does it look like by way of high connection, and what does it look like for people who are not feeling connected?
Greg, just from my perspective, and as you know, I work as a trainer and a coach, so self-employed. So and my natural inclination is toward introversion. So to a degree, circuit breaker in Singapore is an introvert dream. I get to hang out with my close family. But I've also, in terms of being connected, I've made some very deliberate attempts to reach out, and in fact, and genuinely, I love the morning tea, but I have been actually catching up with people and just doing virtual cups of coffee.
Yes.
Just to maintain that sense of connection. But I certainly appreciate that, when I work with a larger team, it's really as a contractor who goes in. So it's a slightly different relationship for me.
Okay, that's interesting. One of the things that came out of the survey was they found that people that were 35 to 44 were actually least connected. Wow. And those people that were 65 plus were actually most connected, which is really interesting to see that. But because you're in Singapore at the moment, Michael, Asians actually feel more connected than people in Australia and New Zealand.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, 63. They had a 63% connection, whereas Australia and New Zealand had a 55% connection. Yeah, which is interesting.
Yep.
What are other people's experiences? Marita, for yourself?
So I'm currently unemployed, so it puts me in a very, very different position. So I went from fully employed, flashbang, extremely busy job to unemployed suddenly overnight, which was a big shock. So now I'm trying to create connections like these, and then with previous colleagues, but it is extremely hard work. And then some weeks there's a lot of connection, and then some weeks it's just things just taper down and nothing really happens. But I've just, from my end, it's a lot of hard work to keep it up, to keep those, because a lot of the people who I have connections with and who I'm still trying to connect with, they are still in jobs. So it's a totally different situation for them.
Yes.
And they don't have actually much time on hand that I have right now, which is, it also creates a big difference. Although I'm now catching up on webinars and some of the things that I've never had time to do before. So I'm keeping active with that, but a webinar that you just listen to is not the same as being connected. So from my end, it's extremely hard work, and so I value the connection, but you just have to keep on going, and one day at a time. So that's where I'm right now.
That's good, yeah. Okay, and that's a good mindset to have. So thanks for that. I'm going to put Jasmine and John on the spot, because I know both of you work in mining, right? And I know that within mining, because I have also worked in mining, that you have the whole gambit of demographics combined with FIFO complexities as well. What are you finding, maybe Jasmine, what are you finding at City Pacific?
Yeah, so I've got a bit of a unique circumstance. So I actually just left WA Police before I joined back into mining in private industry. So I've only been 6 months. So I joined a new Chinese-owned company with a completely different culture to what I was used to, as the head of learning development at the time, called Training Department, with a very firm focus on compliance training. I'm the most senior female in the organisation, and we employ anywhere from 3,000 upwards to 7,000 people. So quite a unique sort of circumstance to find myself in. My department hires around about 20 people directly, indirectly, with dotted line reports, around another 20. So just a medium sort of size department. I signed with CPM, and I'm giving you a bit of background so that you can understand. I signed with CPM on the caveat that I had flexible working arrangements, and that was really foreign for them, and they found it really hard to adapt to. But I have a very understanding CEO, and he was very supportive. So I've had lots of support in that respect. So I had set my team up last November. So I work between a Perth office, a site office, and I work at home, because I also have very young children.
Yes.
I have a 20-month-old baby. So I, was doing the work between, we'd already sort of established that. So the transition to work from home from a personal perspective within my department was actually quite seamless. My team were well prepared for it. We also run the people systems team and people logistics. So we had a fair whack of work coming our way based on that. But in terms of connection, I communicated my expectations around communication quite quickly, and ensured that everyone sort of had an equal understanding of, how often we would communicate and why we would communicate more often than usual, and why there would be not just meetings. Now, funnily enough, Marita's comments around, craving that connection with others and not finding it for people that are working, or people that are working not having available time, I think is that I'm spending a lot of time in pre-organised meetings, and I find myself to be quite fatigued at the end of the day, whereas I used to find that because I was in back-to-back meetings in the office, they still wouldn't extend for more than, say, 6 hours a day. At the moment, some days I can do up to 10 hours worth of meeting and talking, and direct eye contact in VC can become quite fatiguing. So, just picking up the phone has been a bit of a relief. Turning my video off every now and then has actually been a bit of respite. I dress for work every day. I make sure I'm organised and don't have children on my lap, you know, we have great support within our family. And my husband's also a very senior mining person as well. And so, you know, he's busy as well. So, and then the other side to that, I guess, is taking it from my HR perspective. So, you know, I've run our rosters project, whereby we've had to communicate with people on the change of rosters and the return to Perth office and, you know, all of this kind of stuff. So there's been multiple levels, but I guess from a personal perspective, I've not found the shift too hard, but I certainly haven't participated in connections with people outside of my immediate work. So this is probably one of the first engagements I've done, actually. So I've not done much external connection, and I definitely haven't done any personal seeking out or casual conversations. They've all been business related. And for me, you know, I've been demoted from Perth office now for nearly 7 weeks. Yeah. I feel a real personal disconnect because of that. I feel all business.
Yes, yeah. And it's good that you're actually reaching out to these sort of frameworks, because I think what it does is it gives that balance. So it's not only the balance of work, but it's also the balance of community and also that contribution as well. And the interesting thing that you mentioned, Jasmine, is there is a connection between connection and also collaboration as well. Because one of the things that the survey found was that 71% of people feel that they're operating within a collaborative environment. With team collaboration, access to information, but also to technology. People felt there was a high connection with technology. However, if you take technology out of the equation, team collaboration came within the red and the orange zones. So basically, if people didn't have the technology, then they wouldn't have that collaboration. But also too, what we found from one of our last breakfasts was that technology was also one of the stresses as well. So maybe, John, maybe I can just ask you about team collaboration, you know, because you're within the mining sector, within BHP, within IT. What are you finding as well?
It's actually Rio Tinto, Greg. But
okay. That's fine.
Yeah, so from a team perspective, I certainly feel more connected. I haven't quite worked that out. I think it's because they've, you know, I've welcomed them into my house. But certainly I wouldn't say it was 100%, but I'd say there's an improvement on the connection that I feel with my team, and that's been really positive.
Yeah. The
other thing I've noticed is that I've been able to connect with some of the senior managers a lot easier than I would have done in the office. Mm-hmm. You know, that may be because of what's taken place. But yeah, no, it's been really good. And from a collaboration perspective with teams that we use, certainly that's increased big time. Yeah, really, really enjoying it. But I'm a bit of an extrovert, so I'm missing going into the office.
Okay. And
so initially for me, that was really challenging. I've sort of got my head around it now. I've got into a bit of a routine. But yeah, I'm not sure how this will look in the new world, as they keep saying, but yeah, I'm pretty keen to get back and sort of have some face-to-face with people.
Yeah,
is there a plan, John, for you guys to return to the office anytime soon?
Yeah, I noticed there's some BIT stuff happening at the moment, but I mean, that will be staged and probably it's at least another month away.
Wow.
Yeah, true. Bernadette, what are you finding? And Gordon, then I'll get your input.
Yeah, I'm finding a bit of a balance between the two. I mean, I miss going into the office to a certain extent.
Yep.
And I've got into a bit of a routine here, so I'm happy with that. So I'd like more of that. Then I don't want to be totally in the office, and I don't want to be totally at home. I want to balance between the two.
Yes.
I'm hoping that in the new world, that will be more the norm. Then, you know, I've come from a world where, you know, if you're not in the office and you're not looking at your computer from 8 till 6 or whatever, you can't possibly be working. That's the culture in which, you know, I'm more familiar with than the one I'd like to be in.
Okay, so it's getting that balance as well.
Yes, yeah. I do miss that face-to-face, definitely, and the busyness of Just the
Yes.
Further to that as well, as a couple of pieces of feedback that I've gotten from my team is that when they're in the office, they feel like they're less productive, but they're more appreciated because they're seen to be able to be undertaking their work. And so they're worried when they work from home that their perception is that they're not as productive because they're not seen to be doing the work. But we all know, you can sit on Google,
exactly.
in the office. But it's funny that you say that you would like that balance, and I strongly believe that's because people want to let people know that this, hey, I'm still here, I'm still working, please still include me. In those, like John said, you get included in more meetings because you're a name on an agenda now. It's easy to add you into the Teams meeting. But yeah, my guys have sort of said they feel like they need to be more available and give more outcomes wise, not because of anything I put on them, but because of what they put on themselves. And therefore that may be alleviated by returning to the office. They'll feel less of that. So interesting that you say that, Bernadette.
Yeah, and maybe it's that combination. Maybe it's that combination of both, Jasmine. Gordon, I'll get your input in just a second. But one of the findings that we found by way of access to information is that 35 to 54-year-olds had perceived that they had less access to information to those people that were 55 to 65-year-olds, and 65 plus found that they preferred to work more independently, so they didn't have a need for that, which is interesting. And then one of the criteria out of the connection survey was around leadership. They looked at management support. So everybody felt supported by the manager. But then when we looked at relationship with the manager, which came in at the orange, Asia identified that they had the lowest score in regards to the relationship with their managers to what they had. So what I'm sort of getting out of this is this whole thing about connection, communication, making people actually feel included. And one of the highest scores that came out of leadership was being able to access the manager. So it was interesting to hear people saying that, they're getting, like John, you said, you're getting more access to your senior managers now than ever before.
Yeah.
That's one of the strengths. Now, Gordon, you were going to say something earlier. What did you want to contribute?
Yeah, thank you. Look, thank you for the comments, guys, and enabling this to happen. Really interesting, Greg. Look, just an observation from me, and I'm interested in others' comments. On the subject of connectivity, I'm feeling as connected as I ever did with people I've always felt connected with. And those that I've, on reflection, maybe have not been so well connected with, there's a lower connection, lesser connection there now. So I'm wondering if there's that, whatever the dynamic was before this isolation phase, is that just being exaggerated or amplified in the current environment? So that was just a hypothesis. I was wondering if you'd indulge me in commenting on that.
Oh, well, actually, I can back that up with evidence. So one of the other criteria was practicality of working from home. So 66% of people identified that it was practical to be working from home, which is actually in the red zone. But they found that people that were 65 and over felt most connected at 81% with the organisation. But though all other age groups felt the disconnect at 57% in regards to being connected to the organisation. So I think there's a lot to be said about formal, informal communications. And I had one client the other day, they said that they connect remotely with their remote teams purposely to play the game of categories, just purely as a 20-minute catch-up. It's not work, it's not business, it's just basically 20 minutes of gameplay, which draws that connection. Sorry, so go ahead, Gordon. You're going to say?
No, I wasn't going to say. I'm just listening to that, to your response. Thank you. Yep.
We do a 4:30 Friday drink.
Yep.
Not work related at all, and it's just we all talk about what we're drinking. We've even done show and tells. Like people have bought things and said, "Oh, my kid made me this week" or whatever. Like just not work related. And to be honest, we probably wouldn't do that in the office.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that sort of stuff's really important, particularly in the digital world. One of the other things that came out of the practicality of working from home was the ease of working from home. And essentially 35 to 54-year-olds don't find it easy to work from home, and they represent 64%. But interesting, in Asia actually found it less easy to work from home. And the only thing and maybe Michael, I'll get your input into this, but the only thing I can think of is space, where in Australia we have less density. Properties with houses with rooms, where in Asia there's more higher density, living in apartments. What are your thoughts on that, Michael?
I might also add to that, and I will preface this with I'm still a fairly new to Asia person, but the other thing is as well, in my household we have 3 generations, because my mother-in-law lives with us as well.
Yeah.
And we don't have a space issue necessarily, we just have challenges with managing family members. And I know, again, based on other friends and or acquaintances that I have here, that is often the case. Also, in Singapore, all of the kids are doing school from home. So, I have friends, if you've got 3 kids, for example, space is at a bit of a premium if you're trying to create a workspace for everybody.
Yeah. Cool. Which actually backs up the findings by way of distractions that came out of practicality.
Yep.
So 35 to 54-year-olds found that they had the most amount of distractions at 58% in the workplace. But again, if you look at the demographic or geographical demographic, was Asia had the most amount of distractions at 54%, which is interesting. So if you look at the aspect of stress, because that was one of the criteria that with the connection meter, we looked at the aspect of stress. And basically it showed that 43% of people were currently stressed, but those people that identified as highly stressed or very highly stressed identified that the top 4 stress areas was either personal health, family, financial stability, or organisational stability. And there was an aspect there of other, but the highest stress factor came through as family and also personal financial stability as well. And then I've got it broken into different ages and things like that. But the other thing that's interesting out of that was people 65 or greater recorded no high or very high levels of stress. So they were the only group that were in the green zone in regards to stress, of course, with the respondents. But what are people's thoughts on that? Do you think there's people out there that are feeling the pressure at the moment by way of health, family, personal stress, organisational stress?
I think there definitely is. For me, as an introvert working from home, and most of my work has been working from home for the last couple of years. So personally, it's not been an issue. A little bit of uncertainty financially speaking, because I tend to work by gigs.
Yeah.
But as a family, all of a sudden I had my wife working from home and my autistic daughter trying to study from home. And for those who have or know autistic children, they often find that sort of adjustment quite difficult. Work-wise, there was no stress for me. Actually, it was great because I had more time. Because I didn't have to physically travel to places and things like that for site visits and meetings, I had more time in the evening to myself. But during the day, it was, my wife is now physically back at work as of today, and my daughter's back at school. So,
okay.
But that period of isolation was, that created stress, having everyone in the house. And we have a large house, so it's not like we couldn't each go to our own rooms, but there is that sort of interruption and those sorts of things.
Yeah. And the other thing that I found interesting with that survey was by way of personal health, there was major concern for people that were aged 55 to 64 in regards to personal health, and 100% of the respondents identified that personal health was either high or a very high concern for them, which I thought was interesting. In regards to family, the age group of 45s to 55s had the highest concern for family, but other family members as well that came through. And financial security, it was really coming through from the 35s to the 54-year-olds had the highest concern for financial security, particularly if you're in business, because you're probably running your own business, you've probably got household needs, and things have actually changed as well. Chelsea, I think we're the only person I haven't heard from just yet. What are you finding, not to say you're stressed, but what are you finding by way of observation made stress factors of people within your team?
We were in a slightly different situation in that we were deemed frontline essential to stay and keep the counters open. So we had the opposite situation. I had staff that wanted to go and work from home who didn't feel safe coming in via public transport or being on a front-facing student services counter. I worked for North Metro TAFE.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it was trying to balance those kind of stresses, create environments that students felt safe coming in. So, you know, the signage, the marking out the floors, trying to get your hands on hand sanitizer and all those sorts of things. So there's still been people feeling, I guess, they're still connected at work because physically we're still here. But in some instances, the team, you know, with medical issues, which meant that they couldn't come in. So trying to maintain the service did create a stress for the staff that were still here. So slightly different situation than the work from home connectedness. We had staff that would have been able to do that with doctors' permission, but our systems, unfortunately, we weren't ready to go with that. Our student management system not available remotely without a special remote connection.
Yeah.
So it did limit what we could do.
Okay. Yeah.
Different types of stress.
And it's interesting that you did mention the difference between people remote working from home, but those people within the workplace. There, you will have those variations of those stresses. Okay, so I'm just conscious of time and sort of keeping within the time frames, because I know that people probably have other meetings to go to. Just as a where to from here, just some resources and support that's available maybe after this call. With the Connect meter, I've still got the license available for 2 weeks. So so what I'm looking for is if there's any organisations out there that want to take part and use the Connect meter on their team, we've got it basically to the end of the month. So normally to get the Connect meter, it's about $1,800 Australian in regards to that. But because I've got the license, I thought if anybody wants to test it out, we can. By way of that, what we'll do is you can set up the test meter. We can go through and coach you with that. But there's a bit of a criteria to it that because we're looking at different demographics, geographical demographics, it'd be good to have, say, somebody from Australia, somebody from Asia, somebody from Middle East or Africa, for example. But also, too, it'll need to be completed within 10 working days. But the minimum responses for it to be valid is 10 responses, but a maximum of 25. So, because the license is for 100, so I want to try and divide it over 4 different geographical locations. And then from there, with that finding, if people are open to it, you can then share it on the next coffee break as well. So if anybody's interested in wanting to use the Connect meter, because the license is there for the next 2 weeks, maybe just drop probably the easiest thing to do is to drop a comment in the chat area to say you're interested in the Connect meter, and then basically I'll just touch base with you. So, you know, ideally, if you're already an organisation, that would be great. So that's there. The other thing that I've found is I'm not traveling as much. So basically, I'm not doing as much international work and stuff like that. So as part of support as well, if anybody wants to catch up for just a bit of a one-on-one chat, let's call it executive coaching, or just have a bit of a chat with that, I'm more than happy to catch up on a 30-minute Zoom call. There's no fee for it. It's just really just a way of connecting. And what I'm looking at is how can we demonstrate connection in action? So this is just one way that I can demonstrate that in real life. So if anybody's interested in just like catching up, maybe just in the chat function, just say interested in coaching or interested in chat, whatever that might be. And then what we can then do is just set up a one-on-one just to see what's happening in your world. So that's pretty much it from my perspective. Lance, is there anything that's come through on the chat or anything that we need to cover?
So Kim had a question, and I think it might be something that we will get out to him individually, but he asked the question, with the 65 plus group, what was the breakdown between the geographical regions, and were there any differences within that age group, geographically speaking?
Interesting, it was across the board. So it was found that across the board, 65 or plus had the least amount of stress and felt most connected in the workplace. One of the things that we'll do is we'll actually, we'll send this report out to you as well, so you can have a look at it in more detail, and then you can slice and dice it that way. So Kim, what did you have, was that the specific question that you asked, Kim?
Yeah. I guess I'm just sort of thinking, for example, in Australia, if you're 65 plus, if you're working, it's most likely because you want to work.
Yes.
You're more likely to not have a mortgage, not have people living at home, all those sorts of things, because we have a lot more freedom.
Yes.
And financial freedom. I was wondering if there were differences in other countries where, for example, they don't have as good a retirement benefits and things like that. So perhaps a higher proportion of them might be more in the workforce because they have to for financial reasons.
Well, there's a whole lot of cultural complexities, but also too, like the average life expectancy in Australia is about 86. The average life expectancy in the Philippines is 65, right? So, and plus also too, there's different support mechanisms as well. So here in Australia, we're actually getting very well supported by way of the job seeker and the job keeper and all those types of things. Where this afternoon, we're doing another coffee break, but it's really for people in the Northern Hemisphere, and they don't have the same support mechanisms, and they've been in lockdown for the last 40 days. And they can only sort of get out within 1 kilometre. So I think there's going to be different levels of stress depending on the different locations. Kim?
That would be
Gordon,
really
you're going to say something as well?
Look, in part, it builds on what, Kay Parks is what's on the screen. I didn't get your name, but was saying, but we know from surveys in Australia on happiness that as we age, as we get past that 60 plus, people get happier. So the kids have left home, the debt is gone. The point that was being made about the choice of working, and I think there's clearly a parallel with other work done in your findings, Greg, broader demographic work about happiness. The people in the 70s in Australia are the happiest cohort of all. There's all sorts of lifestyle factors in that.
Yeah,
I mean, as an example of that, I fit into the plus 65 bracket well and truly. I've stopped. One of the effects it's had on me working at home is I've found a lot more things to do at home that are completely unwork related. So this week I've been building a new garden shed rather than running around trying to connect with people. Going back to something that Gordon said, I sit on some boards, and one's a very new board. I've been to one board meeting, and that is slightly stressful because you just don't have that same level of relationship with the other directors on that board. But I was at another board meeting this week with a board I've been on for 11 years, and you know the people so well, you know the issues, and it's a very low stress event. So I think most things that I do are with long-standing relationships, and most people in my age bracket would have the same. You don't get to this point without having lots of long-standing relationships that are easy to maintain with a phone call or in a Zoom meeting or whatever it is. It's when you've got to make new connections, or they are new connections, and they're just generally for people in our age bracket, my age bracket, there's just less of that. The only time I've experienced it is this new board, which is one of the Kimberley, and so we're scattered around Australia in the top end. So without being able to have as much face-to-face time, it'll just take longer.
Yeah, true. And you know, Tony, I was talking to my 15-year-old nephew the other day who's at school, and essentially he's craving the socialization of flesh and blood, not so much the bits and bytes. So they're always online. And so during that time of lockdown, he was really looking for human interaction, which is important. So, look, I'm going to wrap it up with a couple of key findings. The thing that I found out of the survey is I think as a leadership team, we're at a tipping point. A lot of the scores came in the orange zone. And what that means for us as leaders, we need to be flexible with people's concerns, but mainly around their personal concerns about what's happening within their home life and what can we do to create collaborative environments. We've identified that 35, 55-year-olds are likely to have the highest stress, but we need to consider things of cultural complexities as well. So Australia is a culturally diverse environment. We need to consider that, or specifically geographical locations. With that, leaders will need to demonstrate high levels of empathy, particularly with stress triggers that are happening, as we identified with concerns of personal health, family, financial aspects as well. And I think the other key aspects is compassion. And as somebody put it on one of our last coffee catch-ups, it's about putting people before profits. And I think that's the thing that will make connection happen. Because at the moment, 42% of people are feeling disconnected. Then what can we do to make them feel included? So that pretty much wraps up our coffee break. Appreciate everybody's input. I think we all got to gain some great insights, which I appreciate for that. Is anybody interested in doing another one of these again, maybe in a fortnight's time or a month's time?
Yep, sure.
Like to do that. So if anybody takes up the survey, it looks like, John, you might be interested in doing the Connect Meter potentially with your team. Maybe we might get some specific insights from business in regards to that. Okay, so that's it from me. Thank you. And I'll see you next time. Good to catch up with everybody.
Thanks, Craig.
Thanks,
Okay.
guys.
Thanks a lot.
That's great.